Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Simply Free Little Talk Show. Tonight, I am your host, Free Little, but I have a special guest in the studio with me by phone, my co host, Mr. Eugene Lewis, who is a Galvestonian historian in his own right and a legend of establishing many things that we know today as celebrating Juneteenth, annually celebrating Juneteenth. So, greetings, Mr. Eugene Lewis.
Well, greetings to you. I'm glad to be on board with you tonight. I thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for being and accepting. I invited Mr. Eugene Lewis because I recall as a kid watching him promote through the ranks of the police and the GISD and other educational institutions. But more importantly, I saw him as a active community leader with people such as Reverend Thomas, and he can tell you more details. But I'm just recalling the things that I saw as a child. And Juneteenth has always been very special to me because my mother also was very active in it. But we're just going to talk about things happening today. But I have Mr. Lewis here today that he is going to share with everyone some things that he knows and how we have arrived to this place today. So, Mr. Lewis, please take it from here. How did we get to a national holiday?
Well, it was a long, hard fight for those who wanted to see it become that.
Because my mother also was very active in it. But we're just going to talk about things happening today.
Representative Al Edwards out of Houston.
Yes.
Thomas here in Galveston. And he has since passed the torch to Sam locally here, has picked it up and become a very prominent, very prominent historian, not just on Juneteenth, but on several things throughout this region and throughout this state.
Yeah, that's amazing. So we are going to actually shout out to Mr. Sam Collins for all that he's worked very hard to establish, and even those before him. But he took that torch with honor, as Mr. Lewis just stated. And so again, we're just excited and celebrating what Juneteenth is all about. And Mr. Lewis, I want to ask you, what is Juneteenth to you before we go into the historical perspective of what actually occurred while we celebrate Juneteenth? So what is Juneteenth to you, sir?
And I will answer that question. Let me also call attention to Sheila Jackson Lee, the congresswoman out of Houston.
Absolutely. Yes.
Senator Cornyn helped push this to the point where it became a national holiday. It was a long, hard fight. And I recall going to Austin with State Representative Edwards, meeting there and explaining the process of making it a holiday. And so once it became a holiday, there were some things that came along with that and allowed employers those who wanted to give us the day off. And it allowed us an opportunity to have access to local and state funding for the promotion of Juneteenth. But beyond that, it was not an easy battle. There were a lot of people who did not want it to become a holiday, did not want to recognize. And so, as I often tell people, I got involved with Juneteenth because of Reverend Thomas. He invited me to be a part of the committee, the original committee, and there were roughly four of us. And you have to forgive me, I'm not going to remember all the names, but Reverend Thomas, Mrs. Annie Mae Charles, I want to say Mrs. Holmes, Mrs. There were enough of us there to make up a committee, but there was not more than 8 of us involved in that initial project. We're talking the late 70s, early 80s. And Reverend Thomas just had the idea, let's bring it back as a community celebration and not just an individual's family thing. Honestly, when he asked me to be a part of that, I knew nothing about Juneteenth. Not something taught in the history books of the Texas schools. Whatever you see in our history books is limited to maybe a few pages or a few blurbs about, slavery and about, prominent individuals. You'd hear about Booker T. Washington. You might hear about T. Woodson, people like that. But you didn't hear the story of Juneteenth.
Mm.
And pulling that story together and finding out, how connected it was to Galveston. As a Galvestonian, that was not something I was aware of. And so the people who came together began to tell that story, and that's how we advanced it here in Galveston to get it recognized and known, and we could tell the story.
Must tell the story. We must. It's the Haggadah. We have to tell the history of how things were established. And that's one of the reasons why I invited you, because I've had Mr. Sam Collins on, and he's given us the history from June 19th of 1865, what actually occurred that day, that why now today we celebrate. But see, now you're giving us the backstory of Galveston's rich history and how it established less than 8 individuals, and Reverend Thomas was instrumental in taking it to this level to get it to now where we are as well.
Yeah, it's been a team effort of people who were really concerned and really wanted to see our history told. Wow. It's one of those things. A lot of us know the story, but we really don't have all the details.
That's good.
I often talk with Sam Collins, because one of the things I did back in the initial years of getting this revitalized, I wrote a narrative of what Juneteenth was. I didn't do the research that Sam has done.
Oh, yes.
He has corrected a lot of things, but the story we put together was one that got picked up by the national press and got circulated. And so a lot of communities around the country have bought into the ideal of Juneteenth. And we call it Juneteenth, and you know how we as a culture, we can take words and put them together. And what we're really saying is June 19th.
That's it.
And we're talking about emancipation, the emancipation of enslaved people throughout the country. President Abraham Lincoln used the executive power of his office to free slaves who were being held in slavery in the states that were in conflict with the United States. Mm-hmm. And so it's not to say that was a stroke of the pen and everybody was set free. It was those Confederate states. And so the enforcement of that was not an easy task. Mm-hmm. And so that's why, even though he did what he did in 1863, it was 1865 before that word was enforced in the state of Texas. And most of us know the story of General Gordon Granger, but Sam has added a new caveat to that. The true story is General Gordon Granger arrived here backed up by colored troops. And so when you hear the folks who were around tell their story, you read their narratives, you read their journals, what it says is that it was the colored men with guns. So you have to understand that this story has been told time and time again, and we keep telling, what has been passed down to us. And now Sam is taking it to the next level where he's not just taking, what we're telling, he's searching for the documents. It's odd to think that back then there was some good record keeping.
Absolutely.
People documented what they had when they did it. The newspapers' accounts were perhaps better informing than some of the other things we look to. And so to understand that, these troops came here, we don't talk about, what those troops did in terms of chasing the Confederate president out of the country into Mexico. We don't talk about those kinds of things. So much of our history has been whitewashed. So that the sanitized version that makes the victors look good, and even when they were conquered, they still wanted to look good. And so that's why you will see monuments to the Confederacy sprinkled throughout the South, because even though they were defeated, they still wanted to have their people and supporters think that they were victorious. Wow. So we have to continue to look at that and know that even after Juneteenth, that people of color, formerly enslaved people, were courageous enough to want to have their full citizenship. They wanted the right to vote. They wanted to own property. They wanted to do the things that they had seen other people do, free people do. And they began to do that. And as a result of that, we saw a lot of blacks being elected to public office, not only at the local levels, but at the state level, and also at our national level. And so when you go back and you look at some of the people who were sent to Congress, some of the people who were sent to state houses, that's a significant number of people. And
that's true.
But every time we would make a step forward, someone was there to knock us 2 steps back. And so when you, in the aftermath of President Lincoln being assassinated, President Johnson stepped up to take his place and virtually began to unravel all the progress that had been made. And what was essential to that, there was still federal troops left in southern states to make sure that the laws and rights were being enforced. But when that president pulled those troops out, all of a sudden we saw the intimidation. We saw things begin to happen to pretty much retard our progress in that time. So even today, you see things happening across the country where they are passing laws, doing things that take away privileges, take away certain rights, and to dismantle the freedoms that we have been enjoying. And I think we have to be very concerned about that, very cautious of that, and very watchful, not just watchful, but be in action to vote and do the things that we need to do. Because something we're doing today.
Such as we're doing today. Yes, yes. Well, we have to tell the truth in order for the people to know the history. And you're here today sharing that. Mr. Sam Collins has come and he shared the truth, facts of our history, as well as Mr. David O'Neill. So please continue sharing more information that we need to know to encourage us to maintain what's in place now.
Juneteenth has an opportunity to not only unify people across the country in a sense that we're telling the same story. We are pulling together. We talk about the Black Wall Street, but that wasn't the only Black Wall Street.
Speak now.
In every community, there were people doing things, pulling together.
Yes.
When I came on the police department, I didn't grow up north of Broadway. But then I quickly became aware of West Market. So that area between 25th, which is referred to as Rosenberg, all the way down to about 33rd Street, you had a lot of black businesses, restaurants, movie theaters, night spots and things like that were in that area. But even beyond that, I can recall throughout the island, there were a lot of black businesses.
A lot.
And they simply disappeared. Mr. Armstrong, his drugstore, insurance company, all of those things we were a self-contained community. A good number of African Americans in Galveston own their property. So it's interesting that we have allowed people to paint a narrative that's not true of who we are. Who we were.
Yes. And it's so crucially important. It's essential to our productivity that we know the history of the success of those that were here with, like you say, homeowners, business owners, the entrepreneurs. And so I'll get to some of the activities that are already planned for Juneteenth, the 17th and the 18th of this year, that also spotlights entrepreneurs. So you're correct.
That's so important. Even when we did the revitalization of Juneteenth, it was really about being able to draw people from all across the community to come together for that celebration.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we sat down at the planning table, we had to throw out some ideas. How do we make this happen? What are we going to do? especially since we didn't have any money to make it happen.
Wow.
And so, pulling together ideals, starting off with not just picnics, but we decided, we're going to kick it off with a parade.
Yes, sir. I love the parades. I remember those parades. You guys were very creative, sir. Very creative with your floats. Very creative.
We started at Ricuni Park and moved down Ball Street to 29th Street, which is now MLK, and up from that to Kempner Park. And people say, why did you pick Kempner Park? Because of the trees and shade.
Mm-hmm.
It was hot. And so to do those kinds of things, and we got them to the park. Well, how are you going to keep them at the park? Well, what we did was we had barbecue cook-offs. We had, hot dogs and soft drinks, and we had a swimsuit contest. We had all those things. But in the week leading up to it, we also had, a Juneteenth Freedom Banquet. We had a beauty. We had all those things that were going on for Juneteenth. And because we wanted to become a more fulfilling holiday for the Black community here in Galveston. And so slowly, more and more people got involved and came on board with it. But I have to say, just like, a lot of people claim, well, they always supported Dr. King. That's not true. And there were a lot of people who were not supporting him, who were fearful of what he was doing. And so now that he's dead and gone, we can all pretend like we were on board.
Wow. That's a good point.
We're doing now. We know what Juneteenth is all about. We can talk about it. We can talk about it with pride. But for a lot of folks, it was something that reminded us of who we used to be.
Who we used to be.
We were slaves.
Wow.
And, we still have that. That's a dark piece of history that we don't like to claim, but it's the reality of who we are.
Wow, but it's true. We must get this information out. We celebrate, but we celebrate with purpose, with intentional information and knowledge of educating our people. And again, that's why this show is a tribute to Mr. Sam Collins for all of the continual efforts that he has put into Galveston County and to Galveston Juneteenth with the facts. And of course, as you stated, those before him also worked hard, but as you gave him, the credit of going a little deeper and getting that right, the narrative correctly. So thank you for acknowledging that. But you also in your own right are a historian in regards to the movement of Galveston. So kind of shift now and share with us, you share with us about less than 8 people starting out as a group and how people come on, but how have you seen it grow and progress now where there's like so much more than just the picnics, as you mentioned initially?
I think, as it picked up steam, we were able to do a lot more, able to get a lot more people involved and get the money to flow towards the effort. One of the many things I remember is we did a Juneteenth blues concert at Menard Park, which is now the McGuire Dent Park. And we had, and I can't say that I was a blues fan because I really did. But one of the things we did, we teamed up with some concerts out of Houston.
Mm-hmm.
They were having an event at Miller Outdoor Theater, and we scheduled our event where we could get some of those same artists to come to Galveston and perform. And so that made it an even bigger thing because more and more people came out for the music and less for the history, but they came and got the history as a caveat to what we were doing with the music.
Yeah, that's amazing that how it's progressed. So because I know that on the 17th and 18th there are an R&B artist that's going to perform, and then there's also reggae that will be there on the historical grounds of McGuire-Denton. So we're encouraging people to come out for June 17th and June 18th. There at McGuire-Denton, 2228th Street, formerly known as Menard Park here in Galveston. There will be so many festivities. You'll see entrepreneurs and great food. And there's also some treats that you'll get to witness, like Men of Purpose and the little first year, 2023, first year little Prince is going to be crowned for Juneteenth. And also you'll have your reigning Juneteenth coming and releasing her crown to the next and crowning the next person. So that's going to take for the 2023 year. So it's some great things happening. So definitely mark your calendar, save the date. And June the 19th, you want to definitely visit, and I call this one of the historical churches, first Black churches, one of the first established Black churches in Galveston, and that's Reedy Chapel A&M Church, and they're having their Juneteenth Family Fun Day. So definitely want to make sure that you are participating in that. So, and that's from 1 to 6. Yes, so we definitely want to make that 1 to 6. Acknowledge that it's 1 to 6.
There are a lot of things that are happening in Galveston.
A lot of things.
There's a very rich history. You mentioned Reedy Chapel.
Yes.
But we also on this island, we have a lot of firsts.
Yes, come on, talk about it. A lot of firsts.
Abbeville Baptist Church, that's a first.
That's a first.
It came out of the First Baptist Church here in Galveston. You have Wesley Tabernacle, United Methodist Church. So when you travel the island, these places are here. They've been here, and many of our churches that are old or almost 100 years old have been fairly well maintained. The church of my family, the West Point Baptist Church. I recall working on that committee as they pulled together to gather the history and get their historical marker. And so throughout the island, there are a lot of hidden jewels that we don't talk about.
Yes.
In meeting with Mayor Brown just a few weeks ago, we talked about the importance of having a National Juneteenth Museum here in Galveston.
Yes, definitely needed. Yes.
We are slow to get to that point. We will miss out on a great opportunity. And one of the things I told him, I believe in field trips. The powers that be need to make a field trip to Washington, D.C. to the National African American History.
Yes.
To see the economic impact of that museum on that in that economy, because people will come if they have something that connects them to their roots, their history. I remember in school, a teacher made a comment about Black kids not appreciating the arts and things of that nature, and I said, it's not our art. I'm not into Picasso. I'm sorry.
You're into the art. Yes.
I'm into the art that reflects something that I can identify with.
Yes.
I'm not a fan of abstract art, but I like art that tells a story. You can look at it and you can see something in it. Mm-hmm. So, like the sculptures and things I have around here, they are John Blackshear. So it tells a story when you look at it. It's just not something you have to imagine who it is or what it represents.
Wow, that's moving. That's inspiring.
Those things are important. Working in the school district, and some of you will remember the movie Lean On.
Yes.
There was a scene in the movie where the kids were being taught to sing songs they didn't identify with, didn't have any meaning to them. And I recall asking for some diversity in the musical selections of what our kids were singing in the choir. And it didn't happen. So I got with Reverend Nathan Johnson. I got with some other people in the community, and we created the Ball High School Heritage Choir. And these kids had to come on their own time. And they had to come on their lunch break to rehearse to be in this choir. And it was a gospel choir in a public school setting. So there are ways to work our way through some things and refresh who we are, be positive about who we are, and have the events that we can celebrate.
And have the events that we can celebrate. That's so true. Wow.
The office was bursting with live entertainment. It had a wellspring of folks who were talented. We had a lot of nightlife, and at those locations, you would find live music. It wasn't just a jukebox. You had people in there, quartets and things of that nature.
This is just great history that you are providing us with. A lot of times we know the current state of a project, organization, agency, but when you get to know what did it require, where was the sweat, not the people that are just walking in now and just picking up the mantle and running to the next step, but those that really took the time to implement and change laws and change procedures and processes. And thank you so much for all that you have done in Galveston County and even outside of the county. We appreciate you. You have an extensive, wonderful career that many will never even get close to what and who you have been in the company of and who you have had the pleasure of escorting around Galveston.
Yeah, and I often tell people I've just been fortunate. I was blessed to have those opportunities, and I give a lot of credit to Reverend Thomas simply because he found himself in a difficult situation, and there was a cross burned in his yard and a cross burnt at his church.
Yes.
So when it came time for him to be out in the public and move about and go places, he received enough threats that he warranted security. So I would always travel with him. And as a result of being able to do that, I got to meet a lot of people. From Ralph Abernathy, who was Dr. King's, right-hand man, to Julian Bond, who was elected to state office in Georgia. And even though he was duly elected, they refused to give him his seat. And so those are the kinds of things that our people had to overcome to be on, to see that that's being disregarded. And, I hear the young people, I hear what they say and how they want to change the culture, but there are more rich young people than we realize.
Yes, come on, state that.
We have to set the right example because there are too many folks looking at them and trying to be like them. And so when you get these East-West wars and young men who have great promise are being taken out early in life, we have to change that. And the folks of my generation, we can't just sit on the sideline and say that's them. No, that's us. That's our future.
Absolutely.
We have to say enough is enough. And I like the fact that, a lot of the guys who started out on those streets have changed their lives. And when you see a Jay-Z and he's dressed up and he knows who he is and he's proud of who he is and he's doing it the right way. And now you're looking at folks who are not just millionaires, but they're billionaires. I look at 50 Cent. When you see him and he's not performing in a show, he's going to be Chris, and you're going to recognize he's a CEO. And so that's important because as I was growing up, there was an organization called Black Businessmen's Club of Galveston.
Yes.
And these guys own businesses. And so if you drove down Market Street, from whether it was Liza's Soul Kitchen, whether it was
Liza's Soul's Kitchen. Yes, I remember.
Soul Bones or Gus Allen's, those are the places that were popular. Gus Allen had a hotel, he had a restaurant right off of downtown, West Market area. But he also had beachfront property.
Yes.
A hotel, cafe, restaurant, nightclub, those kinds of things. And as a kid, I can remember going down to what we call Down Beach.
Yes.
Keep in mind, we couldn't be up on the seawall. there was those couple of blocks right there around Menard Park and Gus Allen's place where we could be. But you look at those businesses in that block, they're all gone. But you had the jambalaya. And the jambalaya
delicious
was a place where if you had celebrities in town who were African American, they were looking for a place to eat, where did they go? The jambalaya.
It's true.
So you would see the B.B. Kings and the Bobby Blands, come through James Brown, those folks.
Wow.
There used to be this thing they call the Chitlin Circuit. Well, that's where, black performers would go. Galveston, ILA Hall, Houston, different locations, JB's Entertainment Center, things like that they knew that they could go and perform and have a safe place to do it in. So we can't let that story not be told. But we have to also rebuild and come back to being able to do those things. And I'm very concerned that there are a lot of people who are working against that, who are tear down what's been built up.
Unfortunately, there is. But tonight, the purpose of tonight is to invite people to the in-place scheduled events that are going to take place on the historical grounds of McGuire Didden, formerly known as Menard Park. But I am especially grateful to Mr. Eugene Lewis for sharing the rich history, especially grateful for him even encouraging you not to forget. And you brought back so many childhood memories of mine, Down Beach and the jambalaya and just the restaurants that was here, the business owners, and how Black citizens of Galveston, Texas owned their homes and had their own businesses and things. And so I'm really glad for what's happening on June the 17th and 18th. So the activities. And then also on the 19th, to not forget Reedy Chapel. Go there. Their event begins at 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. and it is Juneteenth Family Fun Day. So we don't want to forget special moments like that. And you even spoke about the history of the churches. So please share more with us.
Well, I'm just, every once in a while I'll drive around Galveston just to see what's changed, what's new. And since Hurricane Ike, there's been a lot of change. And a lot of the people who made up the backbone of this community have been displaced, have been rejected, have been moved out, and can't afford to be here. But one house in particular I passed by, we have a school named for Dr. Leon Morgan. But this is his old home. Used to be located at 31st and Avenue Inn, right across from Holy Rosary Catholic Church. And I remember visiting with him once, and he had his whole downstairs hallway and stairwell was just lined with old historic pictures from Central High School. And I thought to myself, when he passed away, nobody could tell me where those photos are. Such a wealth of stories on that wall that he could point to and tell you a story about what is that picture, who is that, things of that nature. And so a lot of our history is just lost. And so, trying to find people who can tell the story is so critical. And so those folks who are out there who had those conversations with their grandmothers, with their great-grandmothers, and who know bits and pieces of the story, share it, because otherwise nobody will know what to tell it.
That's true. This is so good that you've pointed out a lot of wisdom nuggets, much history to what we've experienced, and still need to know more. There's so much more on the menu, is what I would say, in reference to the rich history that's here in Galveston, and it has to be told. And so Simply Free Little Talk love making sure that we know the truth, that we operate in facts, because in order to be true to oneself, in order to be true as a people, we have to know the facts, and truth will set us free. Knowing the truth and understanding the truth. And you've made that so crystal clear to us tonight. So again, I thank you.
And I thank you for the opportunity to be with you.
Yes, you definitely shared some things with us. So would you like to encourage us out as a man of God, as a pastor of the gospel? We thank you for that. Would you like to pray us out that as a people that we really do come together in the unity that I got to personally witness with you guys establishing Juneteenth and all the efforts over the years? We can't leave out Mr. Melvin Crockett. I know you didn't want to leave anyone out. And so please, on Mr. Lewis's behalf, he wasn't trying to, leave anyone out, but he did mention quite a bit of the individuals that started out with him and those over the years. Mr. Melvin Crockett was one, Larissa and Joe was others, Miss Sue Johnson. I've watched them countless hours meeting to make it a wonderful celebration annually here in Galveston, Texas. And your efforts were not in vain, Mr. Lewis. Now we have a federal holiday that we celebrate, and the birthplace is right here in Galveston, Texas. So thank you.
Thank you.
Please pray us out tonight for another annual successful gathering for the Juneteenth celebration.
Father God, we just thank you for your many blessings. We thank you for what you've done, all the way that you carried us. We couldn't have done it without you. So God, as we move forward, as we move into the future, God, we honor the history of our community. We honor the history of our people, like those who were enslaved in the days of the Bible. We're still fighting those journeys, those battles. And so God, we look to you in all that we do, that you bless us, that you keep us encouraged, you keep us lifted up. This is our prayer in the awesome mighty name of Jesus the Christ. We all say amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you again. As anyone would know, if you know Mr. Eugene Lewis, he is really one of I call him my icon here in Galveston, Texas, a legendary individual who has really stood the test of time, stood with Reverend Thomas, who spearheaded what we are now reaping the benefits from. So I want to thank all of those who have gone before us and stood in our community of Galveston, Texas. The prayer was amazing. He covered us. So we're expecting a great turnout. We thank you for all the people that are traveling in, safe travel into Galveston, Texas, to come and celebrate Juneteenth. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And again, I thank God for my sponsors. I thank God for the faithful viewers. And I encourage you to come out and enjoy all the festivities that are planned for Juneteenth. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.